She partied while my son was dying. She didn't know I just came home from my final mission. The private room at Mercy General Hospital smelled like antiseptic and dying flowers. My son Benjamin lay in that bed, tubes running from his arms, his breathing shallow and labored. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, they'd told me over a crackling phone connection while I was still in Kuwait, wrapping up my final tour of duty. 6 months to live, maybe less. I stood in the doorway at 11:47 p.m. on that Tuesday night in March, still wearing my dress uniform from the retirement ceremony earlier that day. 40 years of service, 4 decades of sacrifice. I'd rushed straight from the airport to the hospital, my duffel bag still in the rental car downstairs. And there she was, Victoria, my daughter-in-law of 12 years. But she wasn't sitting vigil by her dying husband's bedside. She wasn't there at all. The chair beside Ben's bed was empty. Cold. The nurse who'd checked on him told me he'd been alone for 3 days straight. 3 days. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and opened Instagram, because my friend Evelyn had taught me how to use it during our video calls when I was deployed. She'd said, "Dot, you need to see what people are really doing, not what they tell you they're doing." Victoria's profile loaded slowly on the hospital's terrible Wi-Fi. And there it was. There it all was. Photo posted 14 hours ago. Victoria on a yacht in the Caribbean, champagne glass raised, wearing a designer dress I recognized cost at least $3,000. The caption read, "Living my best life, #blessed, #yacht life, #no regrets." I scrolled down. More photos from the past week. A private villa in St. Lucia, jet skiing, lobster dinners, shopping bags from Gucci, Prada, Louis Vuitton. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I'd sent her $8,500 just 2 weeks ago for Ben's experimental treatment. Before that, $6,200 for his medical bills. Before that, another $4,800. Over the past 6 months, I'd wired her $47,300 from my military savings, every penny I could spare, and then some. "For Ben's care," she'd said on every phone call, her voice trembling with fake tears. "The insurance won't cover everything. He needs you, Mom. We need you." I walked closer to Ben's bed. My boy, my beautiful boy who used to make me dandelion bouquets when he was 5, who'd cried when I deployed for the first time when he was 7, who'd been so proud when he showed me Victoria's engagement ring at 24. "Hey, baby," I whispered, taking his cold hand in mine. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Mom?" His voice was barely there. You're really home?" "I'm home, sweetheart. I'm here now." "Where's Victoria?" he asked, and my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She said she had to work, but that was... Shh, don't worry about that now. But I was worrying. I was more than worrying. In that moment, standing in that sterile hospital room, holding my dying son's hand while his wife partied on a yacht bought with money meant for his survival, something crystallized inside me, something hard and cold and absolutely certain. I spent 40 years in military intelligence. I'd tracked terrorist cells, managed classified operations, and coordinated missions that I still can't talk about. I'd been underestimated my whole career because I was a woman, because I smiled too much, because people thought intelligence officer meant something different when you were female. They always underestimated me, right up until they didn't. I stayed with Ben until he fell back asleep. Then I walked out to the parking lot and sat in my rental car. I opened my phone and started documenting everything. Screenshots of Victoria's social media, bank statements showing my wire transfers to her account, text messages where she'd begged for money with detailed lies about medical bills. Then I made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, Patricia Chen, a military lawyer who'd worked with me in Germany and now had her own practice in criminal defense and asset recovery. "Patricia, it's Dorothy Harrington. I need your help." And I need you to keep it absolutely quiet. Dot? My God, I heard you finally retired. What's wrong? I told her everything. Every detail, every dollar, every lie. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. How detailed can you get with documentation? Patricia finally asked. I have 40 years of intelligence training. How detailed do you think? Then let's bury her. But what they didn't know was that I had already been planning. They didn't know that this 70-year-old woman had one more card to play. They didn't know that the skills I'd spent 4 decades honing in service of my country were about to be deployed for the most personal mission of my life. 2 weeks earlier, the retirement ceremony had been beautiful. Fort Bragg had gone all out, full dress uniforms, a 21-gun salute, speeches from generals I'd served with across 3 decades. At 70 years old, I was one of the oldest active duty officers finally hanging up my uniform. 40 years, 2 wars, 17 deployments, 3 continents. And through all of it, I'd sent money home. Always sending money home. Ben had been diagnosed 6 months earlier, right in the middle of my final deployment to Kuwait. The call had come through while I was briefing a team on a sensitive operation. The commanding officer had pulled me aside afterward. Dorothy, you need to go home. We can arrange emergency leave. But I'd said no. Because Ben had Victoria. Because Victoria had promised she'd take care of everything. Because I only had 6 more months until retirement, and my pension would be so much better if I completed the full 40 years. I'll send money, I'd told Ben over the crackling video call, his face already gaunt from the first round of chemo. Whatever you need. Victoria, you let me know the second there's a bill you can't handle. And Victoria had. Oh, she'd let me know. The first request came 3 days after his diagnosis. $4,800 for specialized imaging that insurance wouldn't cover. I wired it immediately from my deployment location. A week later, $6,200 for experimental medication. Sent. 2 weeks after that, $8,500 for a consultation with a specialist in Houston. Sent. Every call, Victoria's voice would crack with emotion. I don't know what we'd do without you, Mom. Ben's so grateful. He talks about you all the time. He can't wait for you to come home. I'd believed every word. Now, sitting in my small apartment near Fort Bragg, the retirement ceremony was over, my belongings packed, my final paycheck deposited. I looked at my bank statements with fresh eyes. The apartment was temporary housing until I could figure out my next move. I'd planned to relocate closer to Ben, to help with his care, to spend whatever time he had left actually being present. $47,300. That's what I'd sent in 6 months. I opened my laptop and did something I should have done months ago. I looked at Victoria's social media. Really looked. My friend Evelyn had been the one to suggest it. Evelyn Turner, 73, sharp as a tack, and the most tech-savvy person I knew. We'd met at a support group for military families years ago, and we'd stayed close through WhatsApp messages and video calls during my deployments. Honey, I don't want to speak out of turn, she'd said during our last video chat 2 weeks before my retirement. But are you sure Victoria's using that money the way she says? What do you mean? I follow her on Instagram. She posts a lot. And I don't know much about cancer treatment, but I know designer handbags when I see them. I'd brushed it off then. Made excuses. Victoria worked in real estate. Maybe she needed to look professional. Maybe those posts were old. Maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. But now, looking at photo after photo, I couldn't make excuses anymore. January 15th, 2 days after I'd wired $4,800. Victoria at a luxury spa in Scottsdale, Arizona. Much-needed self-care day. January 23rd, 3 days after I'd sent $6,200. Shopping haul video showing Prada shoes, a Gucci belt, and a Chanel purse. Treating myself because I deserve it. February 8th, the same day I'd sent $8,500. Dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Miami. Date night with the girls. Best lobster ever. There was no Ben in any of these photos. No hospital visits. No cancer treatment centers. Just Victoria, living like a lottery winner while my son died alone. I felt something I hadn't felt in 40 years of military service. The kind of cold, calculating rage that made people dangerous. But I didn't act on it. Not yet. Because intelligence work taught me one critical thing. Emotions make you sloppy. Documentation makes you deadly. I spent the next 3 days doing reconnaissance. I called the hospital in Charlotte where Ben was supposedly receiving treatment. I identified myself as his mother and asked to speak to his care team about his bill. Ma'am, I show here that Mr. Harrington's insurance has covered most of his treatment. His out-of-pocket expenses total $3,847 for the past 6 months. That balance was paid in full by him personally back in December. $3,847. I'd sent $47,300. And the experimental treatment he's receiving? Mr. Harrington isn't enrolled in any experimental treatment programs, ma'am. He's receiving standard chemotherapy protocol. I thanked her and hung up before my voice could shake. Next, I called the Houston specialist Victoria had claimed Ben needed to see. I pretended to be following up on a referral. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have no record of a Benjamin Harrington ever having an appointment here. Are you sure you have the right facility? I was sure. I documented everything. Call logs with dates and times. Screenshots of the hospital's billing portal that Ben had given me access to years ago. Screenshots of Victoria's social media posts with timestamps. Bank records showing every wire transfer I'd made, complete with the false reasons Victoria had given. Then I did something that 40 years in military intelligence had taught me how to do very well. I tracked the money. Victoria had been careless. The account I'd been sending money to was in her name only, not a joint account with Ben. And she'd been using it to make purchases that left a clear digital trail. Credit card payments to luxury retailers, wire transfers to a travel agency, payments to a yacht rental company in the Caribbean. I created a spreadsheet. Every dollar I'd sent, cross-referenced with every purchase she'd made. The timeline was damning. Within days, sometimes hours, of receiving my wire transfers, Victoria would make extravagant purchases that had nothing to do with medical care. My phone rang. It was Evelyn. How are you doing, Dot? How's Ben? I told her everything. When I finished, there was a long silence. That evil, conniving little... Evelyn caught herself. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. But Dot, what are you going to do? I'm going to see Ben tomorrow. I haven't told him I'm coming. I want to see what's really happening. Do you want me to come with you? For support? No. But Evelyn? Can you help me with something? Anything. Can you keep documenting her social media, screenshot everything she posts? I have a feeling she's going to delete it all once she realizes I'm on to her. Consider it done. And Dot? That girl has no idea who she's messing with. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my small apartment bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Ben. About the little boy who'd drawn me pictures to send overseas. About the teenager who'd been so angry when I missed his baseball games but still hugged me at the airport every time I came home. About the man who'd introduced me to Victoria with such pride in his eyes. She's amazing, Mom. She really gets me. What she'd gotten was access to his mother's military pension and savings account. The next morning, I drove the 4 hours to Charlotte. I didn't call ahead. I just showed up at the hospital at 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. The nurse at the station looked surprised to see me. Mrs. Harrington? We weren't expecting you. I'm here to see my son, Benjamin Harrington, room 412, correct? Yes, but I should let you know, he hasn't had any visitors today. Or yesterday. The day before that, his wife stopped by for about 20 minutes. My jaw clenched. 20 minutes? I probably shouldn't say anything, but The nurse leaned in, her voice dropping. Some of us have been worried. He asks for her constantly, and she's barely here. We've been taking turns checking on him during our breaks, just so he's not alone all the time. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. Thank you. Thank you for taking care of my boy. Ben was asleep when I walked into his room. He'd lost so much weight since I'd seen him on video calls. His cheeks were hollow, his skin gray. The IV drip next to him was half empty. I sat in the chair beside his bed and took his hand. His eyes fluttered open. Mom? Is that really you? It's really me, baby. I'm home now. For good. He smiled, and for a moment he looked like the little boy I remembered. You retired? Yesterday. Big ceremony and everything. I would have invited you, but I wanted to surprise you by coming here instead. Where's Victoria? She's going to be so excited to see you. There it was, the innocent trust. He had no idea. Where is Victoria, Ben? When was the last time you saw her? His smile faltered. She's been busy with work. Real estate is demanding, you know. But she calls me every day. And she's been handling all the bills and everything. I told her to use the money you sent. She's been taking care of everything, Mom. I'm so grateful to both of you. He had no idea. Over the next 2 hours, I sat with Ben and gently, carefully started asking questions. When was the last time Victoria visited? 3 days ago, for about half an hour. Was she handling his medications? The nurses did that. Was she coordinating with his doctors? He wasn't sure. Where was she staying while he was in the hospital? He thought she was at their apartment, but she'd mentioned something about staying with a friend closer to the hospital. Every answer broke my heart a little more. Finally, I had to ask. Ben, honey, do you know how much money I've been sending for your treatment? I don't know exactly. Victoria handles all that. A few $1,000s, maybe? For the co-pays and stuff insurance doesn't cover? $47,300. And he thought it was a few thousand. I stayed with Ben until visiting hours ended at 8 p.m. I told him I'd be back tomorrow and the day after, and every day until we figured out his next steps. His eyes filled with tears when I said that. I've missed you so much, Mom. I thought maybe you couldn't get leave, or the retirement stuff was complicated, or... Nothing could keep me away from you, baby. Nothing. You're my son. I left the hospital and sat in my car in the parking lot. My hands were shaking again, but not from sadness this time. From rage. Pure, cold, calculating rage. I pulled out my phone and called Patricia Chen. Patricia? It's Dorothy Harrington. Remember me from the JAG office in Germany? Dot! Of course I remember. How are you? I heard you finally retired. I did. And I need your help. I need a lawyer. And I need someone I can trust. What's going on? I told her everything. The money, the lies, Victoria's social media posts, Ben's condition, the hospital bills that didn't add up. When I finished, Patricia was silent for a long moment. Dot, this is fraud, potentially elder abuse, depending on how we frame it. And if she's been lying to obtain money under false pretenses, that's criminal. How much documentation do you have? I spent 40 years in military intelligence. How much documentation do you think I have? Patricia laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Then let's take her apart. But we have to be smart about this. We need to get every single piece of evidence we can before we make any moves. If she realizes you're onto her, she'll delete everything and claim it was all a misunderstanding. I know. That's why I called you first. Good. Here's what we're going to do. Over the next hour, Patricia outlined a plan. We would spend the next week gathering evidence. Every wire transfer, every text message, every social media post, every bill from the hospital. We'd get statements from the nurses about Victoria's absence. We'd get records from the supposed specialists in Houston proving Ben had never been there. We'd build a case so airtight that Victoria wouldn't be able to lie her way out of it. But more importantly, we'd do it all quietly. Victoria couldn't know I suspected anything. "Can you keep visiting Ben without tipping her off?" Patricia asked. "I'll tell her I'm in town for a few days wrapping up retirement paperwork, that I wanted to surprise Ben. It'll buy us time." "Perfect. And Dot, we're not just going to get your money back. We're going to make sure she faces consequences for what she's done, criminal consequences if possible." I drove back to Fort Bragg that night, my mind already working through the operation. In the military, we called this phase intelligence gathering. You don't move until you know everything. You don't strike until you're certain of the outcome. Victoria had no idea what she'd started. The next morning, I woke up at 0600 hours out of habit. 40 years in the military, you don't sleep in. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started building the case that would destroy Victoria's carefully constructed lies. First, I requested complete financial records from my bank. Every wire transfer I'd made to Victoria's account, including the reference numbers and the reasons I'd given for each transfer. I had email chains where she'd explicitly stated what each payment was supposedly for. Those emails were evidence. Second, I logged into Ben's health insurance portal using the credentials he'd given me years ago. I downloaded every explanation of benefits, every claim, every bill, the total out-of-pocket expenses for his cancer treatment, $3,847. Third, I created a detailed timeline. October 12, 2024. Ben diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I'm in Kuwait. October 15, 2024. Victoria calls crying. The imaging he needs isn't covered by insurance. It's $4,800. I don't know what to do. October 16, 2024. I wire $4,800 to Victoria's account. October 18, 2024. Victoria posts photos from a luxury spa in Scottsdale. Credit card records later show she charged $2,300 to the spa. And on and on. 6 months of this. 6 months of lies, each one carefully documented with dates, amounts, and Victoria's social media posts showing exactly where my money had actually gone. My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Dot. She just posted again. Private jet to somewhere in Mexico. I'm screenshotting everything. I called her back. Evelyn, thank you. How are you doing this? I made a fake Instagram account. She doesn't know I'm watching. And Dot, I've been going through her old posts too, from before Ben got sick. She's always been like this. Designer everything. Fancy vacations. Expensive restaurants. But it ramped up about 6 months ago. About 6 months ago. When I started sending money. Keep watching, I told Evelyn, and send me everything. Over the next 3 days, I drove back and forth to Charlotte to see Ben. Each visit, I learned more. The nurses told me Victoria had been there for maybe a total of 3 hours in the past week. Ben's doctor mentioned that they'd tried to have a care conference with Victoria about treatment options, but she'd canceled twice and never rescheduled. Your son needs family support right now, the doctor said gently. The isolation isn't good for his mental health, which affects his physical health. I promised I'd be there more. I didn't tell him why his daughter-in-law wasn't. On the 3rd day, Victoria finally showed up. I was sitting with Ben, holding his hand while he dozed, when she walked in at 7:45 p.m. She froze when she saw me. Dorothy! Oh my God! What a surprise! When did you get here? I stood up slowly, keeping my face carefully neutral. 40 years of intelligence work taught me how to hide everything. I flew in 2 days ago. Wanted to surprise Ben after my retirement ceremony. That's so wonderful! Victoria's smile was bright, but her eyes were calculating. She was already thinking, already trying to figure out if I knew anything. I wish you'd told me. I would have picked you up from the airport. I didn't want to trouble you. I know how busy you've been with work." Was that a flinch? Hard to tell. She walked over and kissed Ben's forehead. He stirred but didn't wake. My poor baby. He's been so tired lately. The nurses tell me he doesn't get many visitors. There, a definite flinch. Well, I'm here as much as I can be, but real estate is just crazy right now. We have a huge deal closing and... I saw your Instagram posts. Looks like you had a nice vacation recently. Her face went pale. Just for a second, but I saw it. Oh, that was a work thing. One of our clients invited me to their vacation home as a thank you for selling their property. It wasn't really a vacation. Liar. The posts had said much-needed break, living my best life. That was generous of them, I said carefully. Must have been a big commission. It was decent. Actually, that's part of why I haven't been here as much. The commission should help with Ben's medical bills. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by her designer blouse and shake her until the truth fell out. But instead, I smiled. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you'll be able to cover his costs. I know the money I've been sending has helped, but I'm sure there's still more to pay. Oh, absolutely. Yes, the bills just keep coming, but we're managing. Good, because I was looking at my bank statements, and I've sent quite a bit over the past 6 months. I wanted to make sure it was all going to the right places. Her eyes went sharp. Of course it is. I have spreadsheets. I can show you everything. I'd like that. Maybe we can go through them together tomorrow? Tomorrow's bad. I have showings all day, but maybe next week? Sure. Next week works. She stayed for 20 more minutes, fussing over Ben, checking her phone constantly. When she left, she kissed him goodbye and promised she'd be back tomorrow. She wasn't. I checked with the nurses. Victoria didn't come back for 3 more days. But I spent every day there. I sat with Ben during his chemo sessions. I held his hand during the bad moments. I brought him books and read to him when he was too tired to hold them himself. The nurses started calling me the angel in room 412. And every evening, after visiting hours ended, I went back to my laptop and added to my case file. Patricia reviewed everything and added her own notes. This is airtight, she said during one of our evening calls. The fraud is clear. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is, what do you want the outcome to be? I want my money back. I want her prosecuted. And I want Ben to know the truth. The truth part might be the hardest, Patricia warned. He loves her. He'll want to believe her version of events. I know. But he deserves to know who she really is. Agreed. Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to file a civil lawsuit for fraud and misrepresentation. We'll request a full accounting of how she spent every penny you sent. Second, we'll file a police report for possible criminal fraud. Third, and this is the nuclear option, we'll request a temporary freeze on her accounts pending investigation. Do it. All of it. You're sure? This is going to get ugly. Patricia, I served in Iraq during the surge. I've seen ugly. This is just Tuesday. She laughed. All right then, let me get the paperwork together. How's Ben doing? Not great. The doctors say his cancer is progressing faster than they hoped. He might have less time than we thought. My voice cracked on that last part. Patricia's voice softened. Then let's make sure he's not spending it alone. You focus on being with him. I'll handle the legal warfare. The next morning, I was in Ben's room when my phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Papers filed. Accounts frozen as of 9 a.m. She's going to know soon. I looked at Ben, still sleeping peacefully. The truth was going to hurt him. But lies were already killing him. 3 hours later, Victoria burst into the hospital room. Her face was red, her hair disheveled, her designer clothes rumpled. She'd clearly run here. What did you do? She shrieked. Ben woke with a start. Victoria? What's wrong? Ask your mother. Ask her what she did. My bank accounts are frozen. My credit cards aren't working. I can't pay for anything. I stood up slowly, keeping my body between her and Ben. I filed a lawsuit for fraud, misrepresentation, and elder financial abuse. Her face went white, then red, then purple. You what? You stole $47,300 from me. Money I sent for Ben's medical care. Money you spent on vacations, designer clothes, and fancy restaurants while my son died alone in this hospital. That's not true. I used that money for Ben. I have receipts. Then you'll have no problem presenting them to a judge. Ben's voice, weak and confused. Mom, what's going on? Victoria whirled on him. Your mother is insane. She's accusing me of stealing when I've been killing myself trying to take care of you. Then where have you been? I asked quietly. The nurses say you've been here maybe 10 hours total in the past 3 weeks. Where have you been, Victoria? Working. Trying to make money to pay for his treatment. Treatment that costs $3,147 out of pocket, not $47,300. The room went silent. Ben was staring at us both, his breathing getting faster. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots. My wire transfers. Victoria's Instagram posts. The timeline that showed my money flowing to her account, and then immediately to luxury purchases. Ben, I'm so sorry, I said softly. I should have realized sooner. I should have been here sooner. He looked at the phone for a long time. Then he looked at Victoria. Is this true? No, she's twisting everything. Those posts are old. I can explain. They're time-stamped, I said, and I have credit card receipts showing purchases made within hours of my wire transfers. Ben's eyes filled with tears. Victoria? Tell me she's wrong, please. Victoria's face crumpled. For a moment I thought she might actually tell the truth, but then her expression hardened. You're going to believe her over me? After everything I've done for you? What have you done for me? Ben's voice was getting stronger. Where have you been? I keep asking for you and you're never here. I'm here right now. Because my mother sued you. The machines around Ben started beeping. His heart rate was spiking. A nurse rushed in. You all need to leave, now. He needs to stay calm. Victoria shot me a look of pure hatred and stalked out. I started to follow, but Ben grabbed my hand. Mom, stay. Please. I stayed. Over the next hour, while the nurses got Ben's vitals under control, I told him everything. He cried. I cried. But he needed to know the truth. I'm so stupid, he said finally. I thought she loved me. You're not stupid. You loved her. There's no shame in that. How much did she take? $47,300. But honey, that's not what matters. What matters is that you're not alone anymore. I'm here. I'm staying. What about your retirement? Your plans? My plan is to be with my son. Nothing else matters. He fell asleep holding my hand. When the nurse came back in, she smiled at me. He's been asking for you every day. We kept telling him you'd be here soon. I should have been here sooner. You're here now. That's what counts. I left the hospital that evening and drove to Patricia's office. She had news. Victoria's lawyer contacted me. She wants to settle. Already? She knows she can't fight this. The evidence is too strong. She's offering to pay back $30,000 if you drop the criminal charges. No. No. She stole from me. She lied to my son. She left him alone while he was dying so she could party on yachts. I want every penny, and I want her prosecuted. Patricia smiled. I was hoping you'd say that, because I have more good news. The district attorney is interested. Very interested. Apparently, Victoria has a history of this kind of thing. You're not her first victim. That stopped me cold. What? Her first husband. Died in a car accident 5 years ago. She was the sole beneficiary of his life insurance, $200,000. His family tried to sue her, claiming she'd isolated him from them before his death, but they didn't have enough evidence. Ben is her second husband? Third, actually. Husband number 2 filed for divorce after 6 months and got a restraining order. We're trying to track him down for a statement. I felt sick. She's done this before. Multiple times. You're just the first person with enough documentation and military intelligence training to prove it. Over the next 2 weeks, the case built momentum. Victoria's lawyers tried everything, claiming I'd given her the money as gifts, saying she'd used it for household expenses that indirectly helped Ben, arguing that I was a bitter mother-in-law trying to break up their marriage. But every argument crumbled under the weight of my documentation. Text messages where she explicitly said the money was for medical bills, hospital records showing the actual costs, social media posts showing her luxury lifestyle, credit card statements proving exactly where my money went. The district attorney filed criminal charges: fraud, elder financial abuse, and theft by deception. Ben filed for divorce. That was the hardest day. I sat with him while he signed the papers, tears streaming down his face. I really loved her, Mom. I know, baby. How did I not see it? Because you wanted to believe in her. That's not a character flaw. That's called having a good heart. The trial was scheduled for 2 months later, but Victoria's lawyers knew they couldn't win. They came back with a new offer: full restitution, a public admission of fraud, and Victoria accepting a plea deal that included probation and court-mandated therapy. Patricia brought me the offer. It's not prison time, but it's something, and you'd get your money back. I thought about it. Thought about Ben, getting weaker every day. Thought about the time I'd already lost with him while chasing justice. I want to add one more condition, I said. What's that? She has to stay away from Ben, permanently, no contact, no letters, no social media stalking, nothing. Done. Victoria accepted the plea deal on September 2nd. The court hearing lasted 15 minutes. She stood before the judge and admitted to fraud. She admitted to using my money for personal expenses while lying about her dying husband's medical needs. She admitted to elder financial abuse. The judge looked at her with such contempt that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Mrs. Victoria Harrington, your actions represent the worst kind of betrayal. You took advantage of a mother's love for her son and a soldier's sacrifice for her country. You will pay full restitution of $47,300 plus court costs and legal fees. You will complete 200 hours of community service. You will be on probation for 5 years. And if you ever contact the Harrington family again, you will serve the maximum sentence for these charges. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Then get out of my courtroom. I got my money back. All of it. Plus Victoria's lawyer fees, which added another $12,000. But the real victory was smaller and infinitely more precious. Ben lived for another 4 months after the trial. 4 months where I was by his side every single day. We watched movies together. I read to him. We talked about his childhood, my deployments, the things we wished we'd done differently. I'm sorry I wasn't there more when you were growing up, I told him one afternoon. Mom, you were serving our country. I was always proud of you. I should have been prouder of you sooner. Should have seen what Victoria was doing. You did see it. And you fixed it. You taught me something important. What's that? That it's never too late to stand up for yourself, even when everyone thinks you're too old, too tired, too trusting. You showed her who you really are. He died on January 14th, peacefully, with me holding his hand. Victoria didn't come to the funeral. She was forbidden by the restraining order. But I saw her, standing across the street from the cemetery, watching from a distance. Good. I wanted her to see what she'd lost. That was 2 years ago now. I'm 72 years old, living in a small house in Asheville, North Carolina. The money Victoria paid back went into a trust fund for military families facing medical hardships. Every year, it helps 3 or 4 families avoid what happened to Ben. I started a blog called The Colonel's Corner, where I teach other elderly people how to protect themselves from financial abuse, how to document everything, how to use technology to expose lies, how to never ever assume that someone loves you enough not to steal from you. Evelyn and I still talk every day on WhatsApp. She helped me launch the blog and teaches online classes about financial literacy for seniors. And sometimes, late at night, I think about Victoria, about whether she learned anything, about whether she's targeting some other family, some other dying person. But mostly I think about Ben, about the 4 months we had together at the end, about how he told me he was proud of me, about how he said, "Mom, you're the toughest person I know." 40 years in the military, and the hardest battle I ever fought was in a hospital room with a laptop and a stack of bank statements. Would you have forgiven them? Or would you have stood your ground like I did? Sometimes I wonder if younger people understand what it's like to be treated as invisible in your own family. To be seen as nothing more than a source of money, a convenience, a problem to be managed. They see gray hair and think, easy target. They see retirement and think, fixed income. They see 60, 70, 80 years old and think, confused, vulnerable, harmless. They never see the steel underneath, the decades of experience, the skills we've honed, the battles we've already won. Victoria learned the hard way. Never underestimate a 70-year-old woman with a military background and a righteous cause. She thought she was stealing from a lonely old lady who would be too confused or too ashamed to fight back. She was wrong. And I'll make sure every elderly person I meet knows they don't have to accept abuse. They don't have to stay silent. They don't have to forgive what's unforgivable just because someone tells them family comes first. Sometimes family is the first thing you need to let go of. And sometimes the only way to honor the people you love is to fight for them with everything you have, even if you're doing it alone. Especially if you're doing it alone. Because that's what mothers do. That's what soldiers do. And I'll be damned if I'll stop being either one just because I hung up my uniform.